In this video we are going to talk about 5 incredible and terrifying stories, although you think they are fiction and could perfectly belong to a horror movie, are totally real. If you want to find out more surprising things related to any area of life and the world around us, do not forget to subscribe, hit the bell and leave your like. Let's start. 1. Murderer on the loose. A man was lying in bed one evening when he noticed there were lots of sirens in the streets outside. And there was a helicopter flying around overhead, and the sounds of barking dogs and shouting people. He looked out his window and saw a great deal of police activity, so he went online to discover what was going on. Serial killer escapes, said the headlines. As he read further, the man discovered a crazed killer had broken loose and that he was believed to be in the man's neighborhood. But he wasn't too worried. As the night wore on, the noise wound down, and the man went to bed. Suddenly, the man was startled awake. He thought he had heard a sound. He listened carefully and was just about to go back to sleep when he heard it again. This time he was sure someone was trying to get in his front door. The man looked down the hallway, terrified, not knowing what to do. The only way out of his room, without going into the hallway, was through the window. He couldn't climb out. Could he? His mind was made up as he saw the door wobble in its frame as someone threw their entire weight against it. Without another moment of hesitation, the man leapt out of his window and ran into his yard. He paused to look over his shoulder, just in time to see the light go on in his bedroom and a team of police officers pile in. The man was amazed and relieved at the same time, until he felt a hand clamp tight over his mouth and the cold steel of a serial killer's knife against his throat. 2. The Hitchhiker. A man moved to a small town and slowly got to know a few of his new neighbors. He soon learned that most of the residents believed that one of the roads out of town was haunted, but he didn't believe in ghosts, so he never asked why. One day, the man went to visit a friend in another town. He was enjoying his visit so much that he ended up staying later than he had planned. By the time he left for home, it was way past midnight. There was no moon that night, and once he left the town limits, the only lighting came from his headlights. Soon it began raining, and the rain made it even more difficult to see. As a result, it was almost too late to brake when the man saw the woman on the road. He jammed his foot hard to the floor, and the car swerved in the road before coming to a stop just inches from her legs. Normally, the man would have driven off again, but it was so late and the weather was terrible. He decided to offer the woman a ride. She got into his car, took off her wet hoodie and held her hands up to the vents to capture the warmth. When they reached town, the woman directed him to her home, thanked him for the ride, and went inside. When the man got home, he discovered she had left her hoodie in his car. He thought about driving back to her house, but it was so late that he decided to go inside to bed and return the hoodie the next day. The next morning, he drove back to the house where he had dropped her off, walked to the door, and rang the bell. An older woman answered the door, and he handed her the hoodie. "I gave your daughter a ride home last night, and she left this in my car," he said. The woman began to cry. "My daughter was killed by a hit-and-run driver many years ago," she said. "It happened on the road into town, and she was wearing a hoodie just like this one." 3. The 13th Floor. The first hotel to have more than 13 floors had a huge Halloween party to celebrate its opening. Each floor was set up like a maze, decorated with cobwebs and other Halloween decorations. There were lots of people dressed up as ghosts and ghouls to frighten the partygoers. An exciting prize was hidden on the top floor, and the first person to reach the prize would win it. Jack and Sophia were 2 of the partygoers. They worked their way easily through the mazes on the first few floors. As they headed up through the building, the hallways on each floor got darker and scarier. When they got to the 12th floor, Jack and Sophia heard a blood-curdling scream. As they made their way through the maze, they heard more screams and cries for help. Finally, in the lobby by the elevators, they saw blood dripping from the ceiling. The elevator dinged, and the doors slowly opened, which was strange because every other time they used the elevator, the doors had been quick and smooth. The light in the elevator was flickering as they stepped in, and, as the doors began to close, lights went out completely. And then, screams so loud the entire building heard them begin to ring out. At first, the partygoers thought it was part of the scary Halloween theme. But then, the owners of the building turned on all the lights and asked everyone to return to the lobby. But when people tried to use the elevator, it never came. The bell would ding, but the doors wouldn't open, and they were all forced to use the stairs. Down in the lobby, the building owners explained they had not played the sounds of the screams, and, as they did a check of everyone who had come back, they realized Jack and Sophia had not returned. Just then, the doors to the elevator opened. It was empty except for Jack's watch, one of Sophia's shoes, and a pool of blood. Jack and Sophia were never seen again, and the building owners took away the button for the 13th floor, so nobody would disappear there again. 4. Hide and seek. Two sisters were spending the summer at their grandparents' house. When the sun was shining, they had plenty of fun, swimming in the lake out front, exploring the woods out back, and playing all sorts of games in the gardens. However, one week, toward the end of their stay, it did nothing but rain. The girls had played board games, read books, made things with their craft supplies, and now they were bored. The grandparents' house was large, and the girls thought it would be an excellent place for a game of hide and seek. The younger sister wanted to hide first. She ran off to find a hiding place while her sister covered her eyes and began to count to 50. The older sister heard her siblings' footsteps running up the stairs and along the hallway to the back of the house. After reaching 50, she opened her eyes and went in search of her sister. The girl went into every room. She looked under the beds and in the closets, behind the curtains and behind the doors, but her sister was nowhere to be found. Finally, she reached the only room their grandparents had told them never to enter. She reached out and grasped the doorknob, turning it slowly and pushing the door open. Much to her surprise, the room was almost empty. The only item was an old, tall, carved wooden cupboard, covered in cobwebs. But the door was slightly open. The girl ran over, laughing, and swung the door open expecting to find her sister, but the cupboard was empty. She leaned in, and as she did, a cold, icy hand reached out from the back of the dark cupboard and grabbed her wrist. She let out a scream and tried to escape, but the hand started to pull her into the cupboard. The girl's sister heard her screams and ran to find out what was happening. She entered the room and looked on in horror as her sister began to disappear into the cupboard. Luckily, the little sister was quick thinking. She ran toward the cupboard and grabbed her sister's legs. After a brief tug-of-war, she managed to pull her sister out of the cupboard, and the two girls ran from the room, slamming the door behind them. 5. The demon Hello Kitty. Do you know why Hello Kitty doesn't have a mouth? No? Well, let me tell you. The woman who invented Hello Kitty has a daughter. Her daughter developed a rare form of cancer in her mouth, and the doctors told her mother there was nothing they could do. Her daughter was going to die. The mother was inconsolable. Her daughter was her only child, and she couldn't imagine living the rest of her life without her. She vowed to do whatever she could to save her. When the little girl was just hours from death, the mother was visited by the devil. He told her he would save her little girl if she promised to invent a cartoon character that would end up in every home. The mother was suspicious. Why would the devil request that she create a cartoon character that would bring joy into the world? The devil's intent wasn't to bring happiness into the lives of children, after all. The devil said he would use the character to hypnotize children and possess them. The mother was torn. Should she save her own child and sacrifice all those innocent children out there? Because of her intense love for her children, the mother agreed, and her daughter recovered. In return, the mother invented Hello Kitty. The character has no mouth, because her daughter's mouth was eaten away by the cancer and sewn up. It has pointy ears like the devil's horns, and the word kitty means demon. So when you say Hello Kitty, you are actually saying, hello demon, and welcoming the devil into your home. Thank you very much for watching the entire video. If you liked it, give it a like, and if you want to know more curiosities about any area of life, do not hesitate to subscribe and hit the bell.